Thank you very much. I'm sure glad to see you here tonight. I know that you're under a heat wave right now that's probably kept about, well, maybe a third of our group away tonight. But it's good that you're the brave souls that came out, because I've got some things that I think you'll enjoy hearing about. Might even be a little bit shocked. You might even be a little bit mad about it. Some of the things I'll bring up, and I'll say, well, if I just known that, I wouldn't have done that, or I wouldn't have done this, or I wouldn't have done that. But the positive thing is that we know what to do, and everything that we're faced with today, we know from research can be reversed. Most of it can be reversed. In many cases, all of it can be. You know of any diseases that you would like to know about that you might ask the question to yourself, can it be reversed? What do we know from research about it? Any particular condition or disease, anything that you're suffering with, and you wonder, am I stuck with this? Is there nothing that can be done?
Type 2 diabetes.
Sorry?
Type 2 diabetes.
Type 2 diabetes, 95% can be reversed. And if you'd asked me that question 15 years ago, I would have said 80%. Today it's come up to 95%. It won't be too long when people actually do the whole ball of wax and we learn a little more about it with 100%. Very reversible. Most of the cases of diabetes I see today are not true diabetes. Most of them are acidosis that masquerades as diabetes. Once you start taking medication for something like Parkinson's, I had another case today that I was consulted on, and I told them probably misdiagnosis. When I see the person, I'll be sure on that. But most of the Parkinson's, about 90% are mis or overdiagnosis. Another condition, yes.
Cancer.
I'm sorry.
Cancer.
Cancer. Cancer is a real tough one, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not really a disease per se. It's part of you. Isn't that something? In fact, there's a lot of processes that happen all the way from the birth of a child where cancer is involved, but it cuts off, like connecting the egg to the umbilical cord. A cancer cell does that. Did you know that? If the cancer cell doesn't die though after doing its job, it continues to grow. In fact, it can grow so slow that the woman will not get cancer of the uterus or cancer of the breast, and come from the same source, till maybe 40 years later, 30 years later. See? So when we talk about cancer, our problem is we're treating it like a disease. It's not a disease, it's part of us. When cells go abnormal, they have a brake built into them. And the brake goes off when the cells go abnormal. At least they're supposed to be. We're going to be talking about Dr. Mitochondria tonight, and he's kind of a jokester on us, and a practical prankster, I call him, because we think we've got it figured out and we've got him fooled, and about the time we think we're out of the woods, up pops something that we didn't know about before. So I'm going to talk about him as we go. Let me know if you're having trouble hearing me. I am stone deaf. I think you mentioned in my introduction, because I can't hear my introduction, she could be talking about Mickey Mouse and I wouldn't know the difference. But I do appreciate you talking about Mickey Mouse, Dawn, you're talking about me. I do appreciate it. But do be aware that because I'm deaf and I have a cochlear implant, that I cannot monitor my voice, so I don't know if I'm speaking loud or soft. I sound like I'm loud all the time when it's on. When it's off, I'm not making any sound at all. So just let me know as we go along. I went to Italian preface mitochondria. Very new concept. How many of you knew what mitochondria was 10 years ago? You had to be among the top geniuses in the world because there wasn't a whole lot about it, was there, 10 years ago? Probably 90% of everything we know, if not more than that, we just learned in the last few years. Research, the ability to go down and see what that little animal's all about. Did you know that mitochondria is an animal? It was even called a name, I can't remember what it was originally, before it was called mitochondria, and they said it's a little animal that exists in the human body. It has its own DNA. It's the only thing that dwells in your body that has its own DNA. Isn't that something? Yet it's in every single cell of the body. We call them an alien. And scientists wonder how we got him. I think some of us know. We have a good idea. It was a gift. You won't live very long if you don't have him. 2 minutes at maximum. Because he's what keeps us alive. So in developing this course, I've had a lot of things going through my mind over the years, dealing with mitochondria. We keep bumping into them every time we turn around. Parkinson's, cancer, all these things, mitochondria keeps popping up. As we learn more and more about Dr. Mitochondria, we start learning that, wow, we've got to start working with this guy. He's a Marcus Welby of the human body, and we're totally ignoring him. We're trying to second guess him. And so I'll be talking about a very unique creature that's inside each one of us, a gift I call it. Now, I did something on this opening slide. It's funny only one time, so watch. Oops, that wasn't it. Dr. Mitochondria, how to get well no matter what ails you. In 1513, the Spanish conquistador Juan Ponce de Leon set sail in search of a mythical island said to have a spring that restored youth. He scoured the Caribbean in what is now Florida before he finally gave up his search. De Leon was correct that there was a fountain of youth in existence. He was wrong about its location, for it was located in a place that did not require a Spanish armada to find it. It's inside the bodies of every one of us. By embarking upon the journey within, you will discover that you already have the best doctor in the house. And tonight I'm going to try to give you some tools that you can work with. I'm not saying ignore the medical system, ignore your doctor's advice. There's a lot of really sincere, hardworking, knowledgeable, skillful doctors, nurses, and other health professionals out there. So anything I say is not meant to denigrate them whatsoever. But we have a system now that's built upon a totally different foundation of what we think of medicine and what we think of health. We've seen the changes metamorphose in our lifetimes. We've seen it go from the concerned doctor that would spend the time with you, searching, looking, researching, giving you counsel and advice, to now barely seeing you for a minute or two and whipping out the prescriptions left and right, making life-threatening decisions about whether you need a surgery or not, like that, because they've got a stack of papers this tall they've got to go through of other cases, and those decisions have to be made immediately or not at all. So we're going to be talking about a doctor who we need to work with. We need to make sure that our doctor works with this person. We need to make sure we're working with this doctor as well. Who are these genetic aliens that dwell within every cell of our body? I need to give you a few didactic bits of information as we go so that you'll understand clearly who Dr. Mitochondria is. But you need to understand, first of all, that his number one mission is homeostasis. That's what he's most concerned about. Your body exists on homeostasis. If you're tired, you need to get sleep. If you've had sleep, you need to get up. If you've eaten, you need to use that energy. See? If you have need of energy, you're getting hypoglycemic, you need to get your energy back up. Homeostasis, that's the game that is Dr. Mitochondria's. He wants us to pay attention to all those little things, which means that when you get a little bit thirsty, drink some water, not as something else. Water's the best. When you get sleepy, sleep, rest. Even in the middle of the day, find 5 or 10 minutes just you can relax to recharge your body. Don't ignore the signals. When you have pain, don't shoot the messenger. Okay. Are we a society that shoots the messenger? We go to the doctor and we say, I hurt here, or I hurt here, and you want that pain to stop. Never mind that the pain is only the messenger, and Dr. Mitochondria sent the pain to make sure that your body knows where the problem is. But you take a medication that covers it up, and he doesn't know. He comes out in friendly fire left and right, and pretty soon you've got allergies because he's looking for an enemy and doesn't know what it is or where it is. And the whole body's inflamed all of a sudden, simply because we ignore that messenger called pain. Our best friend, actually. Best friend. I've got an example I want to talk to you about just for about pain. I'm basing this in my arthritis course as well, but I want to repeat it for those that have not heard it. Let's say you get up in the middle of the night. Your wife's asleep. Okay, I'm going to speak for the husbands now. And you're feeling your way around in the dark. You're John Wayne, aren't you? You don't need to turn on lights. You find your way around just fine. boom, you hit something you forgot about, that anvil beside the door. Wow, that hurt like crazy. There's hardly any pain worse than stubbing your toe, right? It's so bad you let out a yell. You didn't mean to yell, but you woke her up and she said, honey, what happened? What happened? Are you okay? Because she's worried. See, she's always worried about us, isn't she? She's always worried, right? Bless her heart. She's always worried about us. Thank goodness somebody worries about us. And you sit down and you say, oh, I can't even talk. It hurts so badly. Wow. Oh, ah. And she says, well, what happened? I stubbed my toe. And she said, which foot? And I can't tell. Look at my toes. Not my right, not my left. The pain had lasted for 20 seconds. In that time, you finally recovered and you told her the story, but you had nothing left to tell her. She thinks you're just pulling her leg, right? Because there's no pain. You can't even tell her which foot it was. What happened? The cavalry came out, produced what they call anti-inflammatory cytokines. Brought the swelling down almost instantly. And it says, it's okay to work crews here. You guys go on back to sleep. We're going to work. He works 24 hours a day. He does his best work at night while you're asleep. In fact, he says, I can't even start my work till you get to sleep. So if you're going to say, I'm going to stay up all night because I can't sleep, Dr. Mitochondria is going to fight you back. Homeostasis is his game. I want to make sure we understand what homeostasis is. It's the most important thing. Listen to the human body. Listen to every aspect of your body. I don't mean become hypochondriacs, because most of what we have, that we suffer, don't even need anybody but us. Probably 99% of everything we'll ever experience in life. All we need is us, and the food and the water, the nutrition, and whatever it is that ails us. Get rid of the problem instead of trying to get rid of the pain. We go to great lengths to get rid of the pain. We've got 62 million drug addicts in the United States today. 62 million drug addicts. And a big chunk of those are taking legal drugs, painkillers. A big, huge chunk. There's a big underground black market for that. It's unbelievable. It's not just a little group. It's skyrocketing. It's growing every day because pain's the enemy. And I'm here to tell you, pain is your best friend. Get rid of the problem. The pain goes away. And it goes away so quickly you'll forget which foot it was, and which leg it was, which knee it was, which hip it was, which vertebra it was. Don't ignore pain. So, mitochondria are microscopic organelles residing in every cell of your body with their own DNA separate from your body's DNA. In other words, they reproduce themselves, and they reproduce themselves in an adaptive manner. They adapt to whatever that part of the body needs. If they reside in the intestinal cells, they adapt to what they need to do to control the hormones. Did you know serotonin, that thing we keep saying affects the brain, only 5% of it's in the brain, 66% of it's in the gut of the body to digest your food. Its purpose is to help you with your food to nutrition synthesis. Food to nutrition synthesis. I'm going to write it up here. Food to nutrition. It adapts to whatever function you need. They are the powerhouses of every cell. Without them, without which you would not live more than a couple of minutes. Now, powerhouses. That means they burn energy. It means they take energy. They require a lot of energy. I call them collectively as one, Dr. Mitochondria, because they comprise the best doctor in the world. Nobody can compare. No surgeon, no painkiller, no medication. Nothing can compare with what Dr. Mitochondria can do. And you'll find out why as we go. He manipulates oxygen to liberate energy and nutrients from your food, using up to 90% of the energy himself just to accomplish his mission. In other words, he requires the food you eat. He requires the nutrition you take into your body, or he does not do his job. He only gives you 10% to live on. 90% goes to him. Tithing in reverse, if you will. Who are these genetic aliens? Oh, I see it didn't turn. Okay, an alien, friend, or foe. When conditions are not right, however, he works against you and causes autoimmune disease. He actually causes disease. He makes you swell up and have inflammation, have strokes. He makes you have heart attacks. He makes you have cancer. He makes things go wild that shouldn't go wild. It turns off the brakes of the cells that go abnormal, so they continue to grow. Saying, if you don't pay attention to this guy, you're not going to get very far down the road before you have some serious disease if you're not careful. So we need to pay attention. His work often matches the kind of care you give your body. Now, we try not to attach too much moral sense to health. If we did, we'd all be guilty, wouldn't we? We continued on our trek for 5 miles without water because it was too much trouble to reach in the back of our pack and pull out the canteen. Or something else was tasty, not very good for us, and we ignored something that wasn't very tasty that our body needed. You see, those kinds of choices that we make along the way, I hate to put in a moralistic tone and say that you're evil or you're righteous or you're good or you're bad based upon your choices. But never mind, Dr. Mitochondria could care less. He says, I want my 90%. And I give you the 10% that keeps you alive and keeps you healthy and rebuilds you every second. You see. So when you fail to take care of appropriate care, knowingly or unknowingly, right or wrong, intentionally or unintentionally, it allows you to become ill and age more rapidly. When I get to the point about aging, I think you're going to be real surprised how much he's involved there. Hence, the more you strive to take care of your mind and body, Dr. Mitochondria becomes your strongest ally and can carry you through just about any trial you meet in life. There's not hardly anything you will face in life except possibly a trauma so bad that it kills the brain or stops the heart cold. Almost anything else, it will get you through if you will work with him. The human genome, you know the Human Genome Project, you've heard about that. Basically, it's not a very exciting project. All they do is catalog genes. And they try to figure out where these genes came from and what they mean. But there's not an awful lot of time spent on that. Most of it's just recording what the genes are. And its chromosome blueprint, which you know is your DNA, who you are. You are captured millions of times in every cell of your body. I'll show you how much. It's a lot. From each of your parents, you enjoy 23 genes, a total of 46 genetic traits. Now, I need to stop there and say, wow, that sounds like a lot of possibilities. But we have a genetic structure about on par with the blade of grass. We don't even have a structure. The genetic structure is complex as amoeba, which is a one-cell animal. You see what I'm saying? So let's be grateful for what we've got. It's very simple. It's amazing. It's amazing we have as much as we have. And you share 99.9% of these genes that you have in your body with everybody in this room and everybody on this earth. You're only 1/100% different from anybody around you, at most. Isn't that something? We're more interconnected genetically than we ever realized. Though microscopic and with no life itself, there's about 6 feet of DNA in every cell of your body, millions of miles of it, and throughout your body. The 6 feet of it just in one cell. We're talking billions and billions and billions of cells. 6 feet of DNA. DNA becomes the blueprint for every protein assembled in your body, except those that cause disease. Those, for instance, those are invading proteins and are digested from your food. Otherwise, every protein that you have comes from that blueprint called DNA. It's manufactured according to the recipe, if you will, or the blueprint, or the plans, or the engineering schemata, whatever you want to call it, from your DNA. Without enough amino acids and essential fatty acids, your body cannot produce the proteins you need to survive and thrive. Your mitochondria becomes impaired when there are deficiencies of essential nutrients, and you become ill as a result. Your DNA blueprint. Over here you see a long strand. The length of the strand determines how young you are. It doesn't matter how old you are, biologically, or chronologically, I should say. Chronologically, you could be 20, and you might have, your DNA might have a length like another person who's 60, because of the way you've taken care of your body. But once it shortens, it doesn't lengthen. The most you can do is to stop it from shortening. It's a wonderful thing. It's almost like having immortality. When you finally discover what to do to make your body healthy, you can actually almost stop it cold from getting shorter. The reason you want it not to get shorter is because it has to reproduce and subdivide, which means cells die. I'm going to come to the apoptosis, just like it sounds, tosis, which is cell death by being replaced with new cells. When I see a young person, let's say 50 years old, and they've got the cells of somebody who's maybe 30, we call them young cells, youngish cells. Their DNA strands are quite long, and the little snippets at the end, what do you call them, on the shoelaces, you know what I mean? You got a little thing that closes them off, you see? They're nice and neat, and they close it off, and they're far apart. And that means your skin cells are nice and robust. Use that word last year, didn't I? Robust. Robust cells. Yes, you have them. And we've got a number of people in there who have them. Many people have young cells and don't realize it. And if you're taking good care of yourself, some people won't even age. You'll see them when they're 60. Well, you have a change when you see them in your 42nd or your 40th graduation reunion. You see them at 68, you haven't changed. You see them at 78, you haven't changed. You look at 88, what's wrong with you? How come you're standing up straight and I'm bent over? See? And it has to do with these kinds of differences. But believe it or not, the differences in the length of life is only about 12 years. From the shortest lived person to the longest lived person, and the way we're programmed for cell division is only about 12 years. 12 years from what? Try 124. In other words, a short-lived person will only live to be 112 years old. A long-lived person will live to be 124 years old, according to the research we have today. Do we have people living past 124? Yes, we do. We have a lady in the Himalayas that claimed that she was 130 years old. So the World Book of Guinness Records sent somebody out to check this lady out. And they said, let's see your birth certificate. And then through interpreter, she said, Sonny, when I was born, they didn't have paper birth certificates. And he said, but I've got two neighbors that are in their 120s, and they know I was here first. So we've got to get this idea out of our mind that we're old when we're 60, old when we're 70, old when we're 80. You don't even have bragging rights till you're 90. And when you're 100, you've got bragging rights for sure. But even then, you can go longer. One lady I met when she was 88 years old, one of my patients many years ago, my granddaughter brought her in. She didn't want to do anything about her health because she said, my husband's gone, my brother's gone, everybody's gone. It's time for me to die. And I looked her in the eye and I said, you don't know that. Only the man upstairs knows that, right? You're not going to do something we need to worry about, are you? No, I wouldn't do that. I rolled into town years later as a guest consultant in a practice, and guess who drove themselves at 104 years old to the office to meet me? She said, I heard you were coming and I wanted to be here when you came. I said, how'd you get here? Where's your niece that came with you last time? She said, I drove myself. And she was frightened mad because she has to take the driver's license test every single year. She said, I've got that thing memorized. Why did they make me do that? 104 years old. Okay. That's the kind of people we keep an eye on, isn't it? And we've got a bunch of them. It's the fastest growing age group today in the United States. Did you know that? It's the fastest growing age group. Let me tell you how fast it's growing. I told my kids, in the year 2048, when I turn 100, we'll talk. Because there's going to be 1.3 million of me. 1.3 million of me. How many of you are going to be with me then? Okay, see? 1.3 million. Some of you might be 108, and I'll have to look up to you and say, wow, how did you do it? I would have made it to 100. We've got to erase this board completely and say 60's not old, 70's not old, 80's not old, 90 years old, you've got bragging rights, 100 years old, you can do anything you want. Play the accordion, dance, and they better listen because you've got a story to tell if you live to be 100, say. These are the people to listen to. Your DNA blueprint is an unbelievably perfect, beautiful you, the very best you ever were. You look at your photograph when you were 20 or 22, you weren't even fully developed at that age. Fellas, you didn't develop completely until about age 28. Ladies, you didn't develop completely until about age 24. You meet the guys, but not as early as you thought. In fact, you grew a little bit after that. I have a lot of guys say, I'm only 6'3", and I said, how come the church says you're 6'4"? Because he forgot to measure after he was 19 years old, when he was inducted in the service or whatever. Say, continued to grow, didn't know it. Probably even grew and shrunk. It's still a year and taller than he was when he was 19. You need to understand that the very best you were, look at that picture, look at you, say, wow, what a beautiful person that is. That is you in DNA. Did you know that? That's the only person the DNA knows. It doesn't know anything that deviates from that. So realize that Dr. Mitochondria, which I'm going to be talking about how he gets to the DNA part, and that's really important, is going to make a perfect you. He's going to make you younger, more vital. He's going to make you where you can walk with a lilt, when now all you can do is shuffle. He's going to make you run up the stairs if you want to, when now you have to have help. You see? But you've got to give him what he needs. Your DNA blueprint. Most of the code in your DNA are genetic gifts from your ancestors. It is a terribly misguided notion today in medicine that your ancestors gave you genetic flaws. Most of what survived to this day are the best of the best. I really, really get riled up because I've done research for so many years on this, and I see people tell me, the doctor says I'm sick because of genetics. Because my ancestors, it was their fault I've got high cholesterol. That's baloney. Most of cholesterol are liver problems, not cholesterol problems. I asked my doctor audiences, what is the condition called? Cholesterol. Oh, okay, say the lady's 32 years old. She runs 5 miles a day. Skinny as a rail. She's a vegetarian, and she's got cholesterol of 300. Total cholesterol of 300. What is that? And I say, well, that's high cholesterol, and everybody laughed like the instructor is some kind of an idiot. He doesn't know something simple like that. I say, it's not high cholesterol. What is it? It's the liver about to give out. She's drinking too much. Or she's got too many heavy metals in her body. Or she's on painkillers. Tears the liver up. Or she's on Coumadin, the liver killer of all. More liver cancer from Coumadin, near the drug out there. It's a terrible poison. Don't live on it very long. There's ways to get around it. Terrible, terrible thing to be on. Horrible. Short time. Okay, time for a quiz. When you treat chronic disease as if it is acute, it becomes... Raise your hand if you know the answer. What kind of disease does it become if you treat chronic disease as acute disease?
Chronic?
No. Chronic disease takes a long time. Years and years and years and years and years. It becomes what?
Acute.
Acute!
I meant that.
It becomes acute. The last thing on earth we want to do is treat high blood pressure like we're having a heart attack. So I say, how long have you been on a Tylenol? Anybody taking a Tylenol? Are you taking lisinopril? And I say, how long have you been on lisinopril? It's probably the most prescribed of all of the potassium-sparing diuretics out there. And they say, 12 years. Have they adjusted the dose? Yeah, they've added 2 more. And maximize that at the same time. And I said, would you tell me what's wrong with you again? What's your complaint? So I go to the book and I say, hold up. I'm going to lip sync with you. I'm going to lip sync. You tell me what's wrong, and I'm going to say it with you. You'll think I'm a mind reader, but I've got a book. It's called The Nursing Drug Handbook. Okay. So I'm going to look up the Cinepril. Very dangerous medication. But I haven't told them that yet. I just say, what's wrong with you? And they'll say, oh, let's see. I'm dizzy. I have headaches. I'm fatigued all the time. Hardly can get out of bed. Freezing to death. My feet are freezing. Which, nasal congestion. I've got allergies. So I'm on allergy medicine now. I've got diarrhea. They say I've got IBS. Never had that before. I've got impaired renal function, evidence. Hyperkalemia. They won't say hyperkalemia. They'll say sore muscles. Sore all the time. Sore. Get up out of the chair. Oh, that hurts to get out of the chair. And I go on and tell me all these things. Dry, persistent, tickling, non-productive cough. I'm on an antibiotic and don't know why. Are you running a fever? No. And my legs are all swollen up. Okay, here's what it says. This adverse reactions, and it happens in huge quantities over time. In other words, this was only tested on a group 22 to 42 years old. 22 to 42, non-smokers, non-drinkers, no other problem but hypertension. Basically healthy people with high blood pressure, okay? Probably atherosclerosis, I would say in most cases, that's the most benign form of high blood pressure. And most of you who have high blood pressure have probably atherosclerosis, which means calcium plaques in your blood vessels from taking all that calcium that you thought was doing you some good. Instead it was in free form and lining your blood vessels and making them stiff and making your blood pressure go up. It could be Tums that you were taking, does the same thing. So anyway, it says dizziness, headache, fatigue, paresthesia, orthostatic hypotension, feet are freezing all the time, hypotension, chest pain, nasal congestion, diarrhea, nausea, dyspepsia, impaired renal function, problem with the kidneys. See, and now you're taking a medication for each one of those problems. See, that's why I can lip sync it with you. If you tell me what you're taking, don't tell me you're just taking blood pressure medicine. They come in all shapes and sizes, and they have different effects. And some are really dastard. The newest ones are horrible. The newest ones, I don't stay on them very long. Okay, I need to be careful, don't I? I just told you don't stay on it very long. Let me finish that sentence. Get rid of the problem. They won't have to be on it. You don't have to stay on a medication all your life if you get rid of the problem. Okay, coming back to this guy here. Your genetic gifts that you have, your young cells, the beautiful heritage you have, your wonderful talent, your cleverness, your originality, your different personalities. Some of us are walking off a foot off the earth, and we better have somebody anchor us, pull us back down, right? We all have different personalities. I call it a choir, because I love directing choirs. I'm a deaf guy that likes to direct choirs. Is that something I hear in my head, and all of you sound wonderful all the time? You said you sound bad? Oh, don't insult me. You sound great. But all these different personalities, all these talents, all these things that you have, I've got a room full of experts here. Each one of you are expert in something that you've done well in your life. And those are genetic gifts, inclinations, areas that drew your interest to the melody or to the shape or the color or the technology, fixing things, repairing things, engineering things, creating things. You see, these genetic gifts. So don't let anybody tell you you've got diabetes because of genetics. You don't. You only have diabetes because of genetics, because you're not doing what your genetics say you need to do, which I'm going to get to in a minute. Okay, but these genetic gifts come with special needs. Know those needs, and you will live a long and healthy lifetime without diabetes, without high blood pressure, without heart disease, without cancer, without your fibromyalgia, without your multiple sclerosis, without your Lou Gehrig's disease, all these things. All of those are not true diseases. What are they? They're symptoms. They've been given a name, and we've taken the name for so long, it's time for question number 2. When a pandemic condition becomes a $100 billion industry, a cure is highly A, likely, B, unlikely. C, woe to the person who finds one, which is the correct answer. C.
Yeah.
You cannot believe the story behind the story of medicine. If we have all night, I'll tell you a few stories, but you don't have all night. What happens when you find a cure? I'm going to give you one. In Italian, I'm going to tell you one little story. It's a short snippet. Deals with cancer. I'm going to tell you ahead of time. You won't understand the impact of this completely until I get to the pH. When I get to pH, you'll find out the significance of what I'm telling you. So I hope that that's an aha moment when I come to that. He was an Italian doctor back in the 1930s. I've forgotten his name. I even looked him up. He disappeared from the internet. He was on there for a while and disappeared. Someone took his name off. And he came over to Harvard University Medical School. And he made a presentation, standing room only. In fact, he had 2 sessions. He had people crowding up, more people, more doctors attending than he had places to sit down, explaining what he did to take tumors and shrink them of a certain type of cancer. We didn't have the millions of types of cancer in those days. We had a couple of 3 types. And so one major type of tumor, he said, I simply take about a nickel's worth of bicarbonate soda and I inject it into the tumor. And the tumor shrinks. And it's usually gone within 3 or 4 weeks or 6 weeks maximum. Now, I sent a lady to I'll come back to the story. I sent a lady I haven't done all these stories, she had cancer, pancreatic cancer, a friend of mine, really bad, size of cantaloupes, growing like crazy. You get pancreatic cancer, it's very fast. And they sent her home to die. I said, nothing we can do, just go home. So she said, can you find something for me? Now located a Japanese doctor that was doing NK cell therapy. It was called natural killer cell therapy. It just happened to be that Vanderbilt University was running a trial of 10 patients. I don't know the whole story behind it, but the pharmacists that were relating the story to me said that they asked for more patients, but FDA would not let them do it. They said, $10 all you can do. It works in Japan. Their cancer rate's 1/12 what it is over here. We should listen to them. Anyway, turns out she's still alive to this day, and that was 13 years ago. Okay. So here this doctor is up there saying cancer tumors shrink in about 6 weeks' time when I inject it with bicarbonate soda. He had a procedure he used. It was more complex than what I'm explaining to you here, but that was his basic thing. But here's what happened. The medical board said, no, that's not going to be published. It was not published. His visa is going to be revoked, never to step foot in the country again. Story behind the story. Just one story. Many, many like it. I hope you remember that. Know what your body needs. You'll live a long and healthy lifetime. And you will have the cure for yourself. You may not be the one who finds it for all of mankind, because you may not live if you do. But think about this. Millions of consumers who are going into reverse on diabetes, reverse on fibromyalgia. Millions without a drug. Reversing cancer, going in remission without a drug. I know some cancer treatment centers today, for instance, and they've got this fancy equipment. In their commercials, they show this fancy equipment, $30,000 MRI imaging, $30,000 just to go in there for 1 hour session, $30,000. And they've got all this nuclear stuff. They've got all of these medicines and everything. But guess what? Puts the people in remission. They take them off all their medications. They give them vegetable diet. They raise their pH up. And 3 months later, the people are packing their bags and going home. And their success rate is out of this world. It's way above the rest of the industry. It has nothing to do with the fancy equipment. That's how they make their living. It has to do with things that you could do at home if you will. Do the things you need to do. When you find out you've got a problem like that, listen to it. Dr. Mitochondria will be your companion. He'll help you through it. Ignore those needs. I've got several I've listed here because these are genetic things. We say in research, these are genetic. Weakness in the liver, yet it might have happened because you come from a long line of alcoholics. Did you know that? It impairs the mitochondria in the liver. So, it doesn't mean you're going to die young like they did, or from cirrhosis, or from whatever. But if you ignore the heavy metal in your body, you have the same fate without drinking one drop of liquor. You see what I mean? You may not even do what they did, just something else. It might be a vitamin deficiency. It might be because you used canola oil and didn't listen to me when I said use extra virgin olive oil. Or because you decided to microwave your food when I said never microwave your food. Don't even warm it up in the microwave if you want to live long. The DNA of the food is shattered so badly it takes your body over 2 hours to reproduce the amino acids that it needs just to make that food digestible. So don't microwave your food if you want to live long. Okay? Generations of caffeine overstimulation. This is a fairly recent one, where we're seeing now in the young population, too much caffeine is impairing their mitochondria. It even says in all the research now that our youth, average American youth today is 7.2. Never in history have we had youth who are actually growing, reproducing, have osteoblasts in their bones, cell reproduction so fast that they're a new person every 7 years. Never have we had them average 7.2 until the last 10 years. And now what do they have? They have developmental and mitochondria damage. So that 37% of our people, of our children today, have developmental abnormalities. How many have asthma? That is so common, it's incredible. And when I was a kid, I can't remember 2 people in the whole school that had asthma. Or maybe the one. You see? Diabetes was almost unheard of. In the 1970s, 3.4 million diabetics at the end of the 70s. How many do we have now? 39 million diabetics and 71 million pre-diabetics waiting in line to become diabetics by the year 2020. So that by the year 2020, the average adult in the United States will be diabetic unless we, you and I, do something different. Okay. If that's a cell signaling deficiency from generations of high sugar, we have actually increased our sugar intake since we were kids. Those of us that were born in the 1940s, 6 times since we were kids. Think about that penny candy you used to get. Oh, that was a treat. And it was the only piece I ate the whole week. And I had to go collect all those pop bottles to get it. In the day, gobble, 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 gobble. High fructose. Stay away from it. Stay as far away from it as you can. There's a big difference. Stay away from it. Learn to eat blander. Learn to enjoy the taste of food without it being too sweet. Okay? It's very, very important. Cell signaling deficiency. Did you know that's what diabetes is in its genetic form? Is the body can't communicate with itself. It can't control the pH between the organs. It cannot produce the beta cells because it can't communicate with itself. It doesn't even know what it needs because we eat too much sugar. And that is the genetic portion of diabetes. Aminoglycoside antibiotic sensitivity in the kidneys is why I'm deaf today. I started out with a double case of mumps when I was 3 years old, lost about 80% of my hearing. When I was 10 years old, I got the rheumatic fever. And back then, they treated rheumatic fever as a very acute condition. They didn't know how to treat it light, so they gave us streptomycin, dihydrostreptomycin, which is deadly, deadly, deadly to the kidneys. And I just happened to be from a long line of family because of whatever. Could be we were very dehydrated over the years or whatever. Maybe we lived in areas where we worked hard and didn't drink enough water. But it made me go stone deaf. Absolutely 100% deaf. I'm the deafest of the deaf. Because of aminoglycoside antibiotics that were given to me for rheumatic fever. I still have rheumatic fever, but I don't take aminoglycosides. I take the mildest antibiotic I can take, and the smallest dose I can take on a daily basis. If I don't, I probably won't live very long because it's become an impairment that my mitochondria has adapted to. So there are a few cases that you can't avoid, but I feel tremendously blessed. I'm here. I'm with you. I'm warning people about something that could save their lives. I would not be able to do that unless I was a blessed person. And you are the same for being here. And you're the same in all the good you do. So we don't want to ignore the needs. So going on down the list here, fatty liver cirrhosis is one of the characteristics. If you're ever told that you have fatty liver cirrhosis, most people think that's the domain of alcoholism. It's really not. It's the domain of those whose livers were so burdened with heavy metals and toxins that it impaired the mitochondria and the liver to the next generation. That's why we need to warn our young people. That's why I wrote this book. It's absolutely chock full of shocking information. Shocking. We are drugging 16.5 million of our kids. 16.5 million of our kids. If I gave you one dose of what we give them for ADHD, to make you pay attention or whatever, just one dose, you wouldn't sleep for 3 days. That's how strong it is. After a while, you will be a very attentive person as long as you get your medication. We call it medication. It's one molecule different than cocaine. It's the same thing. It's even called poor man's cocaine. And we are burdening 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, developing bodies and minds with it. So they don't even know who they are and wonder why we have skyrocketing hard drugs with their young people today. Not a little bit, skyrocketing. That's why I will fight to the death before I'll ever see drugs be legalized while my grandchildren and my children on this earth. We have 17, just had one born yesterday, 17th. And I don't want that child to see they can go to the drugstore or to the grocery store and get a drug. There's nothing that competes with drugs. Not counseling, no treatment, there's nothing. Drugs will take you over. I've worked with people for years. It takes them over. They have no control. The very best of the human race will be taken over. And it so often starts with something as simple as a pain pill. And if I had my way, you're going to think I'm heartless. You wouldn't get a prescription for Vicodin or any of the opiates for longer than 10 days. Because after 10 days, you're an addict. And after 10 years, it's almost impossible because you have even the desire to get off of it, even though you say you wish you could. And you'll have to go to the hospital a few weeks to do it. If I had my way, that's what it would be. Young people, get this book if you care about you young people. Send it to their parents. Read it yourself. Talk to them about it. It would change their life. Kids, pay attention. Kids are smarter than you think they are. They're not as happy-go-lucky and reckless as we all think they are. Once they know a reason why, and the fact that they're going to have a 100-year lifespan. That's what I'll talk to them about in this book. 100 years you're going to live. 100 years, those teeth have got to last you. 100 years, that skin's got to last you. 100 years, that liver's got to last you. Your heart's got to last you. That brain's got to last you. Don't spend it all in one place. You see, and that's what they do when they go and experience a high in drugs. They spend it all in one place. 10 years worth in one trip, if they're not careful. It sobers them up. And the parents too. The parents will stop letting little Johnny, he's only this tall, and he's got a big gulp of Coke. Enough caffeine to put a horse out. Make him run forever until the race is over and he's still running. And we give that to 3-year-olds. Okay. Telomeres, the bookends of your DNA. The bookends. Telomeres of the DNA determine the length of your DNA strands before they subdivide. Over years, the strands grow shorter and shorter, determining how fast you age and how long they will subdivide. We used to say, years ago in research, cells would subdivide an average person up to about 102 years old. Well, we found that was wrong. We went to the Himalayas and a few other cultures where they live longer and found that it was subdivided much longer. What's the longest lived person after the initial part of the Old Testament? You know, Adam lived 929 years. You probably never thought about it. There's some genetic features I don't have time to get into why they lived so long. They didn't have disease. They didn't have anything really, except just good health. Everything was organic. Nothing was microwave irradiated, genetically modified, synthetically fortified, or whatever else we do to it, degerminated. They lived a long time. They really did. Then after the flood, some things started happening. Started making tools. Started working with iron and all the different ores. Life started shortening. Now, I'm going to say about 200, 300 years before Christ, one high priest, Jewish high priest, I'm trying to think of the time of Ahab and Jezebel. If you remember the story, he lived in Jerusalem and they lived in Israel, say. But he was so well respected, he lived to be 135 years old. And so generation after generation killing each other off. It could be the uncles and the nephews and everybody kept killing each other off. And this guy'd come around and tell them what to do. They'd set up and take notice. They would never, because they thought he was immortal. Because my great-great-grandfather knew him. They thought he lived forever. See, they were scared to death because he lived 135 years old. So we have several cases like that. We don't know how many people lived like that, but we know that case was, and that was just a few hundred years before Christ. So when we talk about the lady in the Himalayas in 130, very possible. Nothing stopping her. Somehow she forgot to butter her popcorn and live longer because of it. Inflammation shortens. We're going to talk about what makes us live shorter lives. Inflammation shortens DNA strands, as does lead accumulations and lack of oxygen and certain nutrition. I venture to say everybody in this room, except the ones who have been doing what we have in our circle program, be exempted because they're on their way. See, almost everybody else will have high lead levels in their body. I don't have time to talk to you about all those aspects, but the great black plagues of the 14th century was not about the rats. It wasn't about the fleas. It wasn't about the viruses. It was about lead. Everything they had that. The water supply, everything. You say, where'd you get that? Where'd you get that? The water. You get it from the air. When the wind blows, lead levels are at record levels in our population today. Mark my words. The demographers are worried. We're setting up for another immunological plague worldwide because we have such high lead levels. It's not that hard to get rid of, but it will lead stores in the body. You don't get it out without chelating. For years and years and years, on organic, we had natural chelates that carted off the more toxic part of lead. Because lead does not go out of the body by itself. The body gets as far away from it as it can by storing it mostly in the bones. It's the #1 cause of bone cancer. Get the lead out, and your hair goes back to the color it probably was when you were a young person. It goes from white back to normal color in many cases. I can't say all, but we see it again and again and again. I've got one patient who came in 3 weeks later and said, "What's this? My hair is getting dark. What are you giving me?" And I was like a little boy about it. Look, I'm about 10 years old now. Because his hair was going black and it started out white. You see the strands coming in. It's getting darker and darker. Lack of oxygen, that's a big deal. We're a very hypoxic population today. We're lacking oxygen. Most of the time we're lacking oxygen for a number of reasons. Most of it nutritional, some of it heavy metal, some of it infections in our body, unhealed injuries. It could be the time that we were on a seesaw when we were kids, and our obese friend was here, and our skinny self was here, and they thought it was a joke to jump off. And we, boom, and broke our tailbone. And it's always bothered us all those years, creating a condition of necrosis, fluid. Cell death without new cells coming in. And there's no surgery for it. There's no pins for it. There's nothing. If you try it, try it. You'll be in pain the rest of your life if you try it. There's no pain medicine to cover it up. I'll talk about that a little more. In fact, the EPA, DHA, the omega-3 essential fatty acids, can slow the rate of DNA shortening and lengthen your lifespan. on average, societies that have a 1:1 to 4:1 omega-6 to omega-3, that's proportion to ratios, live an average of 12 to 15 years longer than those that have a 15:1. In the United States, we have many people who have 0, in other words, ad infinitum omega-6 to 0 omega-3. And they are the sickest of the sick. Amazingly, every single study we have on omega-3, when it's not done by a pharmaceutical company using something that's been overprocessed and synthetic and all the other stuff they do to it, every single one of those small population studies show tumors shrinking, inflammation going down, heart attacks reversing, blood pressure going down, inflammation of the brain, depression going down, learning disabilities clearing up simply by taking an organic form of omega-3. We are so absent of in our population today, it's scary. Instead, we're an omega-6 population writ large, and I'll show you what that is in a minute, because that's a genetic type. This is one of the fundamental reasons Americans have the highest rates of chronic disease and learning disorders of any affluent nation. But it does not have to be that way. When I go overseas, this came back from Japan, they said, why are Americans so sick? Why is your cancer rate 25 times what ours is? Why is your diabetic rate 12 times what ours is? Why is your cardiovascular rate 17 times what ours is? Did you know those were our figures in 1970s? In the 1970s, we had 1/17 as much cardiovascular disease, 1/25 as much cancer, and 1/13 as much diabetes. And are the Japanese angels? No. Are they skinny? Yes. Do we eat a lot of food? Try 3,000 or 4,000 calories in one sitting? Yes. They eat a lot of fat? A lot. But one thing they get that we don't get is tons of omega-3. That's one of their secrets. It's not the only one, but it's the main one. That's why they live 12 to 15 years longer than their American counterparts. 3 basic types of genetic families. Hunter-gatherers, defined mostly a bygone era when man cultivated little but relied mostly on hunting and gathering for their principal diet. They are the shortest lived and the most diseased, high rates of diabetes and cancer, lifespan typically through the 40s to 50s. This is throughout history. It's a genetic type. We don't see much of that type today. When Rome went north and they ran into what they call the barbarians, that's the people they found, big bone, tall people who were just as mean as it could be, and they were hunter-gatherers, and they didn't live very long, and they were diseased, and the last thing they wanted to do was mix with them. But the Romans did mix with a lot of different cultures. So I will go and I will see somebody that says, I'm German, proud German. And I say, let me see your finger. And I stick his finger out there. And I say, no, you're Roman. How can that be? Well, who kept conquering the Germans for many, many centuries? And I go to Ireland. I was the keynote speaker last year in Ireland for their national convention. And I was a room full of professionals. I said, how many of you have Roman blood? 2 hands went up. I said, let's see. Let me see. Let me see yours. Oh, you've got some Roman in you too. Some Roman. Oh, yeah, Roman. They say, how can that be? I said, who built your castles, your roadways, your waterways? Who built your engineering? Gave you a language and everything. The Romans. 800 years worth of it. And the genetics mix so thoroughly that the most Roman people of the original Romans are in Ireland. As we study genetics, we're finding out that not a whole lot has been preserved in Italy for the Romans, because they come from everywhere else. I've got a few Greeks in here. Would I have the Greeks? Greeks. Okay. The Greeks probably, they're still very homogeneous. What we call the modern Greek is very homogeneous. But we're seeing those Greeks coming through different lines and seeing those genetic traits that just like they came straight off the fields of Greece when Socrates walked. Because the genetic is so strong. Okay. Omega-6 wheat germ population depended largely on cultivation and harvesting and dairy for their nutrient profile. Their omega-6 to 3 ratio is about 15 to 1. They develop earlier cardiovascular weakness. Average lifespan through 60s to 70s is pretty average for the omega-6 if you have just that diet. As we go further, omega-3, EPA, DHA, essential fatty acids for many centuries They live generally in coastal areas dependent upon fish, olive oil, dairy, and some grains. They're generally the most cognitively, neurologically, culturally developed of any genetic group. Their omega-6 to 3 ratio is 1 to 1 to 5 to 1. Typically, they live into and beyond the 90s and 100s. Isn't that something? When I go to Japan, I'm forever amazed at how few nursing homes they have. I'm shocked. When I went in this last trip, I was to talk to them about developmental problems with the kids. The problem is they don't have that many. And so I said, tell me what your program is. They looked at each other and said, what's he talking about? As you know, in the United States, the special education is the highest budget item we have in education. It's number one. We spend more money on special education than any other budget item. When you go to college, all my college professors, friends that work in the state universities, I've always worked in private, but they work in the state universities, and you know what they tell me to a person? We're spending all of our money on remedial courses. Remedial courses, 300, 400, 500 kids, we can't build an auditorium big enough for them. And they come and they can't read and write, they don't know mathematics, they don't know English, they can't write, they're functionally illiterate, and they're in college. Spend a lot of money, $100,000 by the time you get a bachelor's degree, somebody's money. Usually the taxpayers today, over $1 trillion, they probably never get paid back. Wow, scary business. That's because they're barely an omega-6 population. They're not developing. They dropped from 7.4 in pH to 7.2, and now they're 7.1. Did you know we have 5-year-olds that are having strokes? We have 7-year-olds with diabetes. I have followed this for years. I'm one of the fellows that has been collecting the data from all the sources, all the objective sources, and it is skyrocketed with our young people. Diabetes is skyrocketing with the young people because they're no longer not even an omega-6 population. They are a flavored chip, caffeine, sugar population. And their pH for most are around 7.1, which means premature aging, atherosclerosis, inflammatory disease, chronic illness common. And the adults, we're leading the way, ladies and gentlemen. The adults, 7.0, acidosis, pre-diabetic, cardiovascular disease, arthritis. What do you want to be? Which genetic class do you want to be? It doesn't matter what genetic class you were born. If you will follow the omega-3 class of genetics in your diet, you will live longer. You'll be smarter. You'll be younger. You'll be more energetic. You'll get more done in your life. You'll leave a legacy that'll go forever. Be an omega-3 population. I'm going to talk to you more about how to do that. Another player in the drama is the RNA. You remember I told you that mitochondria comes from outside of us. It even has its own DNA. Our DNA is, forgive me, it's the Greek to our mitochondria. The DNA speaks Greek to our mitochondria. So it needs an interpreter. It needs somebody that can actually tell it what it says. RNA does that. It's a very complex chain. We know so much about it. Actually, this is the guy that's taught us more about mitochondria than any other thing we found in research in recent years, because it's got an interpreter we didn't know it had. Ribonucleic acid, the RNA, is the neurotransmitter whose work is to translate the DNA code for Dr. Mitochondria, the foreigner in the body. From there, Dr. Mitochondria notes deviations in tissue, neurology, and bone that depart from the instructions in the DNA. It seeks homeostasis. Anything that departs from what RNA tells the messenger tells the mitochondria where it departs, your body departs from DNA, is called pain. And the more it departs, the more pain there is. And the closer it realigns with your DNA, the less pain you have. How about that? It seeks homeostasis, it wants balance in all things. In the process of attracting and burning oxygen from surrounding tissues, it bound up nutrients are freed up to provide the building blocks, the proteins that repair damage. Over a period of about 72 hours, the damage via pain, pro-inflammatory cytokines, hypoxia, and so forth. These are the things that cause the pain. Is mitigated. In other words, getting oxygen to the site makes the pain stop. Getting nutrition to the site makes pain stop. Getting the anti-inflammatory cytokines, which make inflammation go down, makes pain stop. And one thing, man-made technology, a cold laser beam. That's the only other thing we know of that makes the pain stop. How about that? Everything else just makes us think the pain has stopped, and the disease rages on. Okay, but take an opiate painkiller for that, or an NSAI or steroid, and Dr. Mitochondria's crew slows to a crawl. So while you're congratulating yourself that finally the pain has stopped because I took an opiate, that's Vicodin and all those terrible, horrible drugs that were just unleashed on humanity as a curse practically. They only give you pain relief for about 72 hours, and after that it doesn't do anything but just make you, ooh, you don't even know what's happening. Pain's still there. It only works for about 72 hours. After 10 days you're an addict to it, and it's really hard to stop. You have to make yourself stop. It takes a lot of self-discipline. People don't realize how addictive they are. And when we have so many millions that are addicted today, but when you take that painkiller, the only reason you would take it is because you just had surgery, or you've got a broken leg, or you were knocked out, or you had to be knocked out. I've had people ask me, did it hurt to have to get a cochlear implant? Because that's implanted about that far down inside my head. And I said, only if you want to stay awake and watch. Otherwise it didn't hurt at all. You see? And that's the use of the opiates. You go beyond that, and there's no use for it. But you know, I refused the opiates right from the beginning, during recovery. When I've had teeth surgery, I refused the opiates. Every bottle I've ever had of any opiate, I put aside, never taken. Never had a flu shot, none of my kids have either. Only one of my kids have seen the inside of a hospital during their lifetime. Well, I say I've had a couple that have had children in hospitals. Most of our kids were born at home. But they've never been exposed to that. So when I had my 38-year-old son, he just turned 39, and he went to the hospital a while back because he cut himself with a saw. And he says, Dad, I've never experienced anything like that before. I couldn't believe it. You just absolutely shocked him that they had to give him a shot to kill the pain around it so they could sew him up and heal. It took him forever to heal. 6 months later, he still had an infection raging in there because of the way they did it in the emergency room, and they charged him $12,000 for it. $12,000. They did there maybe for an hour and a half or 2 hours, most of it in the waiting room. But he was just shocked. He was crying about it. I couldn't believe it. I said, don't cry. What's with you? He says that I've never been in the hospital before. I said, yes, you were. You were the person. You were born in the hospital. You just don't remember. Okay. Dr. Mitochondria, how it makes a perfect you. Remember, the DNA's got a snapshot of the most beautiful person on earth. That's you. In the DNA, you're absolutely a perfect person. You have no idea how beautiful you are. I'm not exaggerating one bit. I know a lot of people look in the mirror and they browbeat themselves down thinking they're second class or that they don't look beautiful or whatever. Everybody is beautiful. They just don't know it. Because Dr. Mitochondria is not doing his job, and he says, well, I'm waiting for you. Okay. Here's how he works. We have a laser. Would you bring the laser up so I can show everybody? And it shoots down into the tissue about 2.5 to 3 inches. We go in a circle on this until we stimulate all the mitochondria. As we do, the mitochondria stores the light that we put into it. It's a narrow spectrum of light. There's no heat. And it puts this light in it that lights it up and makes it vibrant. All of a sudden, it burns oxygen like crazy. It is on fire. It is ready to heal. And it will keep that light for about 3 to 4 days. It looks over toward the DNA side, the blueprint, and through its interpreter, the RNA, telling us what the DNA says that part of the body should look like. The bones, the vascular system, your neurology, everything, immunology, puts everything back in place. It brings a work through like you can't believe, but it can't do it by itself. Because it's storing all this light, it has to burn oxygen like crazy. If it doesn't have oxygen, if you're hypoxic, you have a hard time. If you're walking around with something pressing down on it, on the part that's damaged, you won't get oxygen to it, and you're going to be just choking your mitochondria. It's not going to get well. If you're taking a painkiller, it won't get well. But the nutrients come out of the woodwork because it unbinds them. As the oxygen burns, it sends a chemical messenger to all the nutrition that you need for that site. The calcium ions, all the different, the B complexes, everything. And it comes rushing to that area, cartilage cells and everything, to rebuild, and it rebuilds furiously. So that after you get your cold laser treatment, the heavy duty work is done after you leave here. It works for 3 days or 4 days after you leave here and does not stop. So that, here's the way we do it. It's circle. You need oxygen. You need nutrients. You need MCHC. That's the only form of calcium that I even put my stamp of approval on. For years and years, we were faced with almost all dead forms of calcium. There's no calcium you can buy at the drugstore or the health food store that is available in live form. Pearl calcium in its original form might have a little bit like maybe 60%. We're talking ions now. We're talking about when you've got ionic structure, live electricity, it's in live form. MCHC is the one. It's made in New Zealand, by the way. They have the highest standards of organic food in the world. They don't let anything from America pass that trash bin when you get off the plane. I know because we own property down there and go down there all the time. We have kids and family live down there. My wife's from New Zealand. With CM Plus, live cartilage cells, replaces your cartilage and rebuilds your joints. Alpha B is live form, pre-digested B vitamins, not the kind made from your yeast and other allergic forms of B complex. Most of the B complex, most people are allergic to the B complex they take from the market. You're better off getting it out of your food supply. And this is the only one I approve. EPA, DHA, and all 6 of the essential fatty acids in the omega-3 class, which again is not available commercially. I wish it was. There's some good ones out there. We have not clinically tested those good ones to know how good they are, but these have been clinically tested. CardioFlow that I talked to you about for the chelation of the lead and other heavy metals. We have 2 or 3 different kinds of chelates. This is the most aggressive one. It also rebuilds the vascular system. So these are the main nutrients. If these are the only nutrients that you took, and you stopped microwaving your food, and you stopped using canola oil and only use olive oil, and you had cold laser on the injured parts of your body, and you took advantage of the medical massage techniques and all those things that we have available to get oxygen back into the body in those remote areas and get your circulation back up, your neurology and immunology working again, and you did a few other things, avoided flavored chips, avoid caffeine, cut your caffeine way down. If you have to have caffeine, don't go more than 1 cup a day. Cut your caffeine way down. It's killing you if you don't. It's not worth what you think. If you do those things, this portion right there, it's been bothering you for 30 years, will be a perfect you again. And you ought to see this, what the skin looks like when that happens. It's beautiful. You say, how did you do that? How in the world do you keep your skin like that? That's what people will say to you. It's amazing what happens. You lose weight, a lot of things happen. All of a sudden the body starts functioning. pH by the numbers. I only have a second to cover on this because I've already given away a lot of the clues already. But here are the 7.4, and that's where we need to be, all of us, 7.4 pH. I have been on the pH topic now for probably in publishing and lecturing for about 30-some years. I can't remember, I was trying to remember the very first time I ever brought it up. It was all theory at the time. Today it's all proven out. Absolute fact. The one thing that absolutely astounds me though is how many people out there who are publishing on the internet and other places saying if you want your pH to come up, you change your diet to strictly alkaline food. and that's not true. You have what is called the citric acid cycle. It requires a certain amount of acid in your food. You've got to have acid in your food. You have to have acid in your diet, or you will go too alkaline and have a whole set of new diseases. Back in the 1970s, we were concerned about the population growing too alkaline, and then the microwave came along, overpasteurization of the dairy supply came along, and all kinds of terrible, terrible things in our diet, new flavorings and new food colorings and everything came along. And now, from that point forward, it was downhill into acidosis. So we went from being on danger of being an alkalosis population to an acidosis population. And so it's very rare that I find an alkalosis person today. They're usually a vegetarian, a strict vegetarian, and they only eat alkaline type foods. And those people are also sick, I hate to say. I have them communicating from all over the world to me, saying, how come I do all of this right and I'm sick, and I have IBS, and I've got digestive problems, I can't sleep, and my bone mass is depleting and everything. And I have alkalosis of all things. And it's because that's not where you should be. There's a place called homeostasis. It's at 7.45, the most perfect place you can be and be the longest lived and the most vital, have the most vitality. So you don't want to be the best of American European diets. That's 7.3. We never got above 7.3 on the omega-6 population, which actually went 15 omega-6 to 1 omega-3 in our diet. We want to be omega-3, which is 4 to 1, down to 1 to 1. 4 to 1. That'll shrink cancer, by the way. I made a list. I was looking up just before you came. I ran into a synopsis of studies that actually listed what who the studies that they had on this. Here's what they found, and this is a collection of different studies taken with the organic form of EPA-DHA. That they, atherosclerosis went down, essential hypertension went down, obesity went down, diabetes went down, arthritis, autoimmune diseases of all kinds, cancers, especially breast cancer, and cancer of the colon and prostate went down. And what else? They've got a bunch of them right here, just from taking omega-3. And we have a study right now that's never going to be published. It was done on children on omega-3 for cancer, children with cancer. And there's a really unfortunate group because almost all of those kids are eating microwave food, lots of canola oil. They're eating flavored chips. Don't eat flavored chips. Stay far away from them. They have bright dyes. They're eating the bright cereals with all the yellow and the red and everything. And aspartame on the artificial sweetener. Stay away from your diet drinks. They'll make you gain weight. Diet drinks and that don't make you lose weight. They'll make you sick. Anyway, those poor kids, I tell you, and you talk about genetic features that probably are spring-loaded for having liver problems or pancreatic problems or whatever. In fact, wherever the cancer develops is usually where they're spring-loaded with the genetic weakness, whether it be in the kidneys or the liver or the pancreas or wherever. But when they tried the omega-3, and a friend of mine was the chair of this particular study, he said it never will make the light of day. Our funding will dry up if we publish. So, when a pandemic condition becomes a $100 billion industry, a cure is highly likely, unlikely, woe be to the person who finds one. Okay? This is what happened to our diet. We once, I don't need my pointer, so I'll just use my finger. This is us before 1978. Before 1978, every single category of chronic disease was many, many times less than what it is today. Think about where you were in 1978. Osteoporosis, anybody? It was almost unheard of. Fibromyalgia? What is that? Maybe 2 people had it in the whole world. Multiple sclerosis, a handful of people, and we almost knew what caused it. Today we have so many people that say they have MS, and I'm here to tell you 90% of them don't have it. I chaired a study on actually it was on fibromyalgia and MS, and we found those rates so high we had to disband the study. It was absolutely so controversial to even go there, because most of the people we saw came from some of the finest medical institutions of the world, and they said they had multiple sclerosis and they had no such thing. And guess what about those cases? They can reverse, and many did, We know how to reverse most of those cases now. It's not just one cause, by the way. For one person with the same cause, I mentioned heavy metals, lead poisoning, for instance, which is, most of us have. One person have fibromyalgia from that amount of lead. Another person will have multiple sclerosis. In the most severe cases, another one have Lou Gehrig's or ALS. Another person will have diabetes because it affected their pancreas more. Another person will have depression because it caused inflammation of the cortex of the brain. See, from one single cause, many, many different conditions. And that's the reason there'll never be a cure for any one of those. So you don't pay any attention to them. Your handout tonight is worth its weight in gold. 35 years of my research and my colleagues' research goes into the 7 underlying causes of all chronic disease. Put on one sheet of paper. Address these, and I don't care what you have, you will get rid of it. Address these, and it doesn't matter. I was on the phone with somebody today from New York State, and they wanted to know what they had. And they named all these exotic diseases. They even named things that I didn't know, and I thought I knew everything. Where'd you get that? I haven't heard of that, and I looked it up. It was named after the doctor discovered it. It was a syndrome that developed as a result of a medication the person took, of all things. We have more pathologies today from medication than any other source today. I put polypharmacy as number 2, only because it's not as prevalent as number 1. Commercially debauched food supply and chronic nutrition deficiencies for most Americans, most prevalent. But as far as what creates pathologies, number 2, polypharmacy is it. If you want Alzheimer's, take Alzheimer's medication. If you want true diabetes, take diabetes medication and take heavy doses of it, especially take insulin. If you want fibromyalgia, take something that deadens the nerves so that you feel wonderful and the doctor's a miracle worker, but now you've got something much worse than what you went in with 6 months later or a year later. If you want a condition, take the medication for it. It will make you that way. You remember number 1. See, you're all going to get an A in this class because I can tell you're listening. When you treat a chronic disease as if it is acute, it becomes
Cute.
ugly. No. Acute. Okay. 7th line. Find it. Find it. And you know what? It's not that hard. How many thimbles you have to lift up? 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You'll find it. Some will jump off the page. Some people don't even have to tell you. I can ask a 3-year-old what's causing it. And I say, well, Grandpa shouldn't smoke. See? 3-year-old can figure that one out. Some things are so obvious. Do it. Take the underlying cause. Take the underlying cause. Don't pay any attention. I don't care exotic it is. How many people have told me over the years, I've got something rare. Only me and 2 other people have it. I say, what is it? And they'll name me something. Now look at them and I'll look at their cartilage. I'll look at their bones. Now look at their vascular system. I'll look at their epithelium. I'll look at the heavy metals. I'll look at all these different things. 7 of them, see? And I say, da-da-da-da-da. It doesn't matter. I don't even need to learn how to pronounce that word. So don't pride yourself in being special because you've got something nobody can pronounce. It doesn't matter. The underlying causes are the only thing that matter. That is, brings me to another topic. If you want to get well, if a lot of people want to get well, we have 12 million people in the United States today getting disability. They come into me and they'll say, I'm using medical marijuana. I say, why? Because I've got pain. I said, would you like to get rid of the problem that's causing the pain? I can't take the marijuana anymore. 2 types of cell death and regeneration. I only have a second for this. I'm sorry. I wish if you want to know more information, see me. I'll go over this with you. But I find, here we've got, I'm going to use this as my pointer without, you have to put on sunglasses if I actually turn it on. Over here, an unhealed injury. You cannot believe that time that the kids jumped off the seesaw when you were in the playground, that's what you're suffering with at 74 years old. And it causes necrosis. Chronic pain edema in the mid-body, and headaches. And you're taking pain, you're taking medicine for all three conditions. When there's really only one condition, it's an unhealed injury. And there's only one thing that'll fix it. It's the only thing that'll fix it. Otherwise, you're going to suffer it the rest of your life if you still have that at age 74. What happened when you were 5 years old in the playground? Okay. On apoptosis, this is where you want to be. We have to turn you around. Over here, you're making fluid left and right because the cells are dying and no new cells are coming in. We've got to get you changed over to apoptosis because here the injury heals. Over here, you've got untreated infection. It could be keratosis obturans. I could be teaching. You're saying I'm saying some fancy words. I could be teaching a room of otolaryngologists. You know them as your ENT physicians. I teach them. And I could say, your population are plagued with keratosis obturans. And I'll look at each other and say, what, he's speaking Greek again? No offense. Where did he get that word? Now look it up. Very obscure, but so common it's scary. Well, we thought it was earwax. I say, look guys, I've probably handled a couple of 100,000 patients in my lifetime, and all over the world in different countries. And I hardly ever see in the United States impacted wax. I see it all the time. I say, give me that syringe, hand it to me. Put it in a videoscope and a big screen, blow it up thousands of times, and I'll squirt that in there, a half a squirt. And I say, now the wax is gone, you guys. It's gone. And they say, how can it be? We spend hours sometimes. We've been telling them so they get out the door. We can't spend an hour and a half taking it out. It's because it's not wax. I say, look again. And I say, that is what you thought was wax. Excuse me. He's a good friend. It's not wax. I tell you what. I've got a couple of hearing professionals in the room, and I don't mean to embarrass anybody, but we don't see much wax anymore. Hardly ever. It's keratosis obturans. You know what it is? It's a septic infection. Until it goes so big, it doesn't bother you. You don't even know it's there. It's very insidious. And then one day, you get hauled to the hospital. They say, everything's stat, 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 stat. You hear that word everywhere. Shouting over the doctor, so-and-so, stat, 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 or stat. And guess what? White count off the roof. It's got to be an appendicitis. Looks just like it, quacks like it, it must be it. They open them up. Nothing there. We have more appendectomies and diverticulosis operations today without the diverticulosis or the appendix burst. Then you can shake a stick at in the hospitals today. It's setting in the ears. And they say, well, what do you think it is? And they say, well, whatever it is, when he gets out of the hospital, send him down to Chartrand to get that wax out of his ears. And that's exactly what it was to start with, and it wasn't wax. Keratosis obturans. Okay, I wish I had time to talk about that. Some of you have in this room, you have keratosis obturans. You may not even be aware of it. And I find that, believe me, you take it serious. Your ears are self-cleaning. You should never ever have to have wax cleaned out of your ears. If that was not so, we'd be a deaf species. Because we couldn't even look in the ear until about 100 years ago. Before that, they stood by a window and used a reflector and looked down inside and think, oh, what is that? I can't tell. I think it's an eardrum, but I'm not sure what that is. Well, let's cut it out and see what it is. That's what they had to do in the 1800s, as recent as that in human history. And we're still in the Stone Ages. Toxic liver, abdominal edema, bile secretions, skin lesions, dark under the eyes. Don't cover it up with makeup. Come see me. Remove the toxin, usually lead, and watch it go lighter. It may not go perfectly light. We're talking a genetic feature, okay? And it's probably grandfather goes way, way back because of lead, because of a liver weakness in that family. Very typical of the cirrhosis fatty liver. On this side is optimal cellular pH is 7.45. Over here is your polypharmacy side effects, blood pressure, cold feet, lightheaded, AFib. If you're taking a blood pressure medication, do not settle for having cold feet. I have people say, I've got cold feet all the time. Let me tell you what's happening to you. If you have cold feet all the time from taking blood pressure medicine, you're becoming demented and don't know it. Don't settle for that. If you're not getting enough blood to the feet, you're definitely not getting enough blood to the head. It's harder to get blood in the head than it is the feet. If it's not reaching the feet, you've got a problem. Do not take so much blood pressure that your feet are cold. You're taking too much. You need nutrients, not medication. Nobody was born with a medication deficiency, were they? Okay. Pericarditis, congestive heart failure, edema in the legs. That is a heart problem, but you thought it was in the legs and you're taking a water pill. Don't take the water pill. All you're doing is masking a bigger problem and gonna die of congestive heart failure. And sooner than needs be. Find a better way. Address the problem. There's only 7 of them. Prosthetic joints, pens, screws, rods, I'm sorry to say, they produce fluid. They're on the necrotic fluid side. They're not over here. Your body does not like it. I wear a cochlear implant. It's implanted down the side of my head with the most compatible materials known to man. And I still have to take an antibiotic just to clear out the sepsis that gathers around it. Or that place where I had the incision originally will start fluid coming out. So even if I did not have to take it for rheumatic fever, I would still, once in a while, if you have an artificial knee, artificial hip, the situation is a little different, but I say just to be sure, take an antibiotic for 72 hours every quarter, and you will probably keep the majority of the sepsis down on your body, and you'll be much more pain-free than you will not taking anything. I'm so shocked at the number of people that were ever told that, who are in constant pain with their knee or their hip or whatever. Once we get the infection out of there, they say, well, I can actually walk. It doesn't hurt so much now. It's just a little discomforting. Okay. I'm going to be turning the time over to you in just a minute after I cover just a couple of things here. When healing really becomes the goal, if the goal is really healing in medicine, this is what I tell all of my professional audiences. Number 1, antibiotics, steroids, surgeries, and narcotic painkillers would be used sparingly and primarily for acute conditions. Sparingly. There's not many of those that need to happen. A good 80% of the surgeries I see, maybe 90%, pick a number, don't have to happen. Dr. Mitochondria can do a better job. Diuretics, statins, anticoagulants, non-insulin diabetic type 2 medication, steroids, NSAIDs, your non-steroidal, your antibiotics, and so forth would be bridges used temporarily to sustain us while underlying causes are investigated and addressed, instead of giving them those bridges and keeping them on those bridges until they become tumble down around us, making a chronic condition become ugly. Okay. Diet, hydration, bioavailable nutrition would be medicine. That would be medicine. Diet, drinking water, the cheapest medicine of all. Bioavailable nutrition would be medicine. And chelation, manipulation, rehabilitation, counseling, necessary surgeries, and a host of general approaches would become the main treatments of medicine. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a medicine of the future. And when we finally own up to that as a society, that is what your medical doctor will be prescribing. Not the bridges, just for short term. Underlying causes, biomarkers, and contributors, which is what we look at here, would take priority over signs and symptoms and diagnostics. Patients would be routinely healed from hypertension, diabetes 2, arthritis, depression, neuropathies, cardiovascular, developmental, degenerative disorders. Routinely is the key word. Disease and chronic illness would eventually become rarer. We would live longer. Our hospitals would shrink. We wouldn't build a new one for ages because we wouldn't be using them. They'd be ghost towns. Now, when I travel around the country, I gave a course on diabetes about a month or so ago, And I told the group how fast the healthcare costs are spiraling, how fast they're going up. It's skyrocketing. Under the new law, it is skyrocketing. It's going to go up by 5 times over the next 10 years. 5 times, mark my words. It takes up a huge amount, right? It went from less than 16% of the GDP in 2008. Today, it's almost 20% of the GDP. And it's going to be 24% at minimum by year 2017. And the computer model we used for that, we discovered was too conservative. Which means $1 out of $4 in the United States is going to be spent on health care. What in the world are we doing? There's other things besides being sick, right? So I'm driving through Wichita Falls, Texas. I'm trying to remember the city. Maybe it was Amarillo. I went through Amarillo. In an area that used to be a nice area, it's a slum now. Couldn't believe it. Just built themselves a nice big huge hospital. I was astounded. I could not believe that that city was even big enough. I had set up their cochlear implant program in 1994 and 1995 in their main hospital, and it was a miniature compared to this new one they had just put in. Gleaming, the finest tiles, the finest everything, absolutely spanking new, and it was the most expensive building for probably hundreds of miles around, in a slum that used to be a very nice neighborhood of nice people. Broke my heart. That is the future if we don't change. That's not where we should go. That's the opposite direction. Remember that Back to the Future thing? You know, how it goes downhill and pretty soon and everybody's living in that junkyard. To me, that's where we're going, unless we turn it around. You people can do it. Introducing the circle method. In circle, we use videotoscopy biomarker assessment. How many of you had that from me so far? Raise your hand if you've had them. Were you surprised? Were you surprised how thorough it was? I mean, find things that you probably didn't even know from all the diagnosis. Were you surprised? Were you surprised? See, every one of you need that biomarker assessment. And guess what? It doesn't cost you a penny. How do you like that for a price? I don't charge a penny for it because it's education. I don't charge you a penny. Specially targeted nutritional support. Occupational therapy consult. Circle occupational therapy. That's a special method that my wife devised. It's a wonderful, wonderful rehabilitation method. Medical massage and cool laser packages. Soy paraffin baths twice weekly if you need that for rheumatoid arthritis in your hands or your feet. Low cost ionized alkaline water. We have a lot of people that come in to fill up whole 5 gallon or 2 gallons, whatever, for their family, and that pH comes up and their diabetes goes back down. Isn't it wonderful? In fact, if I just did one thing, if I could just get everybody's pH up to 7.4, by whatever means, if I could just magic wand strike 7.4, tumors shrink. Just give you the goofy answer, didn't I? Because tumors can't grow in a body of 7.4. It's impossible. It goes to 6.8, and the body's almost dead. Fibromyalgia clears up. Diabetes clears up. All those conditions clear up just from raising your pH. And also, we do certified zone diet counseling. I'm going to. I have some materials here. I'm going to read you a couple of things after she gets through her report with the massage. I'm going to let you come up and talk about the massage for a minute. And we are compressed for time. Go ahead.
Good evening.
This is Amy Polzin, by the way. I'm sorry I didn't tell you who she is. Very wonderful massage therapist and one of the most positive people you ever meet. If you're ever down and you think life is not worth living and you're about to do something you shouldn't do, come see Amy.
Call me. I just wanted to touch on a few points of massage therapy. I started working here in February, and before that I was thank you. I needed that. Before that I was a patient here, and I just wanted to touch on some of the things that I do here. And we have 2 other massage therapists that have just joined us. And first of all, massage is, as we all know, relaxing. Who doesn't like massage? But there's many other things that massage does for you. First, it improves your circulation of blood and movement of the lymph fluids, reduces blood pressure, helps relieve tension-related headaches and effects of eye strain, enhances the health and nourishment of the skin, improves posture, strengthens the immune system, treats the musculoskeletal problems. Yeah, I can't even say that today. Rehabilitation of post-operative and rehabilitation of after injury. When I first came, just a real quick, one of the reasons that I love Dr. Chartrand's philosophy is my mom, who has come to Dr. Chartrand, she has been hurting for like the last 10 years and just been in pain. She's had a hip problem, low back issues, kind of like, you know, a lot of people that do come in. And being a massage therapist, I would help her with the massage part of it, but we didn't have the exact combination down.
We should tell about how she got to that point with the
Yeah,
big company.
yeah, come to that. So we actually came in to see Dr. Chartrand, and you know, he went over his philosophy that he's just been telling you guys. And my mom started on the supplements. We started doing the massage therapy and the cold laser therapy. And basically she had stopped living. You know, she stopped doing the things she loved doing because she was in pain all the time. She stopped traveling with my dad. Her and my dad loved to travel. And then we started on this program with her in the supplements, doing massage, and the cold laser therapy. And she started this in February. Yesterday I get a phone call from her, and they're up at the mountains because they have the house up there and they're staying up there. She says, I gotta tell you something. I says, well, what is it, Mom? She says, well, last night your dad and I went to this cancer benefit, and she said they were having a dance contest. I says, really? She says, well, yeah, your dad and I entered the jitterbug contest. And I said, you did? And mind you, she hasn't danced for probably 3 or 4 years just because she's been in so much pain. So since February, she's gotten to a point now where she can get out and win a jitterbug contest. So it's something I wholeheartedly believe in. The philosophies that Dr. Chartrand has, the supplementation along with the medical massage and the cold laser therapy are something that really, truly do, the combination makes everything really work together. So I just kind of wanted to give you those insights and what massage does, more than just the relaxation part of it. There's many, I could go on for hours, but we don't have that time. So I just wanted to give that information to you guys tonight, and thank you all for coming, and I'll hand it back over to Dr. Chartrand.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Now you see what I mean. If you're down, come see her. She'll pick you right back up. I'm going to videotoscopy biomarker assessment. You all have an invitation for me to do that for you, and I hope that before you leave tonight that you'll set a time with Maggie. I've set aside times. I'm not here all the time. Those of you who know me well know that it's a rare time that I'm here sometimes because of my travel. I'll be going all next week. For instance, I was in Mexico for 10 days a while back. I was put on a program on the child's development on television, did a program on Alzheimer's, and then worked in a practice there for about a week. So there's a lot of my work takes me throughout the world. And so when I'm here, I'd like to spend all my time at Circle, seeing people and helping them untangle, helping them find out what's causing their problems. Amy didn't have time to tell you about her mother's case, how she happened to end up needing an artificial hip, but it was because of a medical mistake that was made on her. And some of you may have a similar thing. I'm deaf because of a medical mistake. We didn't know. They didn't know. It wasn't published till about 10 years later that it causes deafness by using aminoglycosides on people who have a kidney weakness, which they do I had, by the way. So those things do happen, but the thing is we're able to help you sort it out through videotoscopy and other assessment methods that we use. It's not the only one we use, but it's the main one, developed over a period of about 35 years of continued development. I wrote the first book on videotoscopy in 1992. I had serial number 2. Number 1 was for sales. I went out and sold them. Serial number 2, they cost about $22,000. It went from an $85,000 unit down to $22,000 when they were finally released for the market, made by a Swiss manufacturer at start before they came to the United States. So I had serial number 2, and I had to travel all over the country to find experts that knew enough to help me with what needed to be written. It was amazing how little we knew. And now here we are, 1992 to 2012, all these years later. And this was written in a study we did in 2006 on videotoscopy that tracked the biomarkers through videotoscopy of 98 patients. We learned so much. It was a study that went through an institutional review board and considered NIH study level of quality. It's my gift to medicine. I did not patent it. I'm here to give it away, and give it away wherever I go. I'll give it away to you as well. So I hope you consider that. I'm going to show you something here. You need this book. All the way through I've talked about pH, and for some reason this is the first group that I've spoken to on pH that has not asked me out of frustration, how do you raise your pH? This book tells you how. That's a short answer. Read the book. In the introduction it says, for more than 3 decades Americans have found themselves an increasingly sicker population. People who by every indicator, lifestyle, genetics, and diet should be healthy, but are instead suffering in skyrocketing numbers with diabetes mellitus type 2, cardiovascular disease, neuropathies, dementias, cancer, the list goes on. We're not talking about a small segment of the population. We're talking about the population. That's us. In this book here, which is a companion to that, it goes more into the diabetes, how to reverse diabetes, sleep issues, and so forth. It gives you some basic things that are tremendously helpful. And I'm going to read something from the prologue at the very last. For years, it has amazed me when otherwise intelligent people will criticize the concepts taught here. First, my guess is that these concepts are interrupting somebody's gravy train. Question number 2. Say, you're 8 students, you know the answer to that one. It's interrupting somebody's gravy train. There is certainly no danger or high cost involved in trying what is recommended, but could mean huge losses to those who have a vested interest in an unwell population. The burden of proof is not on this author or any other author who espouses the gentle, no-risk strategies of healing. Uncountable individuals who have tried these principles and who have overcome their diabetes mellitus type 2 and other chronic disease are the proof. We have many people who have reversed their disease. Do you know anybody that's reversed their cancer? I do, many. Do you know anybody that's reversed diabetes? I do. Almost every diabetes patient that really truly wanted to get over their diabetes and follow the instructions we give them have overcome it. It's possible, and we have lots of proof. But they want the kind of big dollar proof that Big Pharma must show on their potentially very dangerous drugs. The kind of drugs that barely heal and are so laden with side interaction withdrawal effects as to speed hundreds of thousands of people to early death. Do you realize hundreds of thousands of people every year die in the United States and early death because of the medications they're taking? That's no exaggeration. It's no exaggeration. It's scary. Okay. The kind that are caught up in million-dollar lawsuits. You see those on television. You know how many thousands and thousands uncountable lawsuits are going on right now. Boy, a lot of things flashed across my mind with that one. Out-of-court settlements, trial for the drugs are trialed on average now for 4 to 8 weeks on the fast track, but never tested or designed for long-term use. The kind with effects in which the body becomes insensitive and requires ever larger doses to have any positive effect. Or the kind that wear out the liver, the kidneys, the adrenals, the pancreas, the heart, the muscles, and deplete the bones of calcium as they plunge the body into low pH. No, the burden of proof is on the critics. Let them try it and prove that it doesn't work. They can spend the $800 million on each recommended nutrient to see if it works. But of course they wouldn't do that. They know that if the trials were unbiased and designed to show long-term results, that aiding individuals would become healthier. They know that if they required their trial participants to stop microwaving, stop smoking, stop caffeine, refrain from alcohol, eat non-irradiated, non-degermed, low-pasteurized whole foods, that people would get well and stay well. They would feel like exercising. And closing. Can we put vested interests aside and design objective long-term studies and publish forthrightly on the side interaction withdrawal effects of recommended substances? Can we speak on levels of risk in a way that the consumer understands there are mild risks with misuse of natural substances, but still risk if not used intelligently, and severe risk if misuse of narcotics and other powerful bullying drugs? are used. After all, drug dealers are not breaking into health food stores. People are not dialing 911 for every dose of supplements. Can we be adults and tell them the truth? Thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you. Yes.
Can I ask you what your opinion is on stevia as a sweetener?
The best of the
The best of the options out there
yeah,
besides.
yeah.
Best of
It's on artificial sweetener. Stevia is probably the only one that's truly safe. Actually, there's some benefits for it. When we're talking about reversing diabetes, the reason I don't push stevia is because I don't want to trick your liver. Anytime something sweet touches the tongue, the liver produces an enzyme getting ready to break sugar down. If the sugar doesn't come, it turns whatever it does get into triglycerides. So that's the reason I don't push any kind of a sweetener to replace. In other words, if you say you want to go, if you just want to maintain your diabetes, that's fine. But if you want to go over it, I wouldn't say use it. Wait till you're over your diabetes, then you can use it to your heart's content. And moderation. Yes.
How about honey?
I'm sorry.
How about using honey for sweet?
Honey is probably the best way to go. In fact, I have nothing against that because it gives the complex carbohydrates
But it's
that the
higher in
body's.
calories, but
What's
you
that?
don't, it's higher in calories, but you don't need as much, so does
I'm
that,
sorry.
She says it's higher in calories.
but you don't
Like
use
that's
as
a concern
much.
of hers.
You won't gain weight from honey.
But I mean,
You'd have to
yes,
be
if you're
sedentary,
watching your
yeah.
calories, you might need.
See, what happens is honey has a lot of, if you get it in the most organic form,
Yeah.
it has lots of anti-inflammatory properties. It contains a lot of nutrients. It's almost like a vitamin pill in itself. And when you say you've come to me and you're saying I'm allergic to these mesquite trees, or I'm allergic to this, or I'm allergic to that, I would say find some honey where the bees have pollinated that area, and take that, a teaspoon a day for 2 weeks, and after you've digested it, you'll produce the antibodies, and it recognizes it as friendly. It won't be friendly fire anymore. It causes allergy. It's a good way to overcome allergies. Honey is an absolute wonderful food, and let me tell you, we're in very big danger. Over 80% of the world's population of bees have been destroyed. My little guy called up a royal mite, and where did he come from? Anybody? Where did the royal mite come from? Now we have this destroying the whole bee population. When that happens, famine throughout the world. The number one pollinators. Over 80% of the world's bees have been destroyed by GMOs grown in the United States and Brazil. And Brazil's already had a rolling wave of drought by pestilence over that, because they lost some of the honeybees. Now, we want to preserve our honeybees. If you're in the honeybee business or know somebody that is, get behind them. Well, they need our help. I've been saying that widely and loudly. I have some of my students, or some of the top nutritionists in the country, heads of departments in a couple of cases of major universities. And once they discovered that, boy, I tell you, they were so alarmed because it's just killing our food supply. Really dangerous thing. GMOs got to be outlawed. They're growing super weeds. They've got DDT out this year. DDT in Kansas and South Dakota and a few other states. DDT, the worst neurotoxin in the world. As bad as Agent Orange, very close to it. Yes.
Have you ever heard aloe vera and,
I'm sorry.
have you ever heard of a mixture of aloe vera and aloe vera leaves with honey and whiskey drink?
Honey and whiskey, you're saying?
I mean, yeah, that's a combination of.
Yeah. Listen, honey is used with a lot of things, but honey and vinegar, honeydew, different things. Honey adds actually the liver loves honey because it has the nutrients that enable it to add amino acids to whatever it needs in your body. You produce amino acids all over the place when you have honey. I'm not certain that whiskey's important. I've never drank about the liquor in my life, so I don't know that that's. What's that?
All this mixed together with an aloe vera.
Yeah, no, you might be talking about a medicinal approach, sir. And I don't mean to ridicule that because there might be a medicinal use for that. We use alcohol in a lot of things in medicine, and a lot of people are not aware of that. And it might be an acute condition of which that might be the best approach. Some of these old homespun methods of treating disease really are far superior with many of the sterile type drugs we use today. So I don't ridicule them. But I would just say, as a rule, like I hear people say, why don't I drink wine to get my cholesterol lower? I say, why don't you just help your liver get well, get the lead out of it and all that? You won't need to drink wine then. Oh. Okay, yes.
I'm just wondering, with students with Asperger's, autism, or oppositional defiance, they're often prescribed antipsychotics, which is amazing for 6-year-olds.
What's that?
Like when they're prescribed antipsychotics, like to
Oh.
treat oppositional defiance?
Yeah, no,
or
that's bad,
Asperger's?
that's bad.
What is the solution for that?
Get rid of the problem. Those kids have a problem. Get the lead out of their system. Get the chemicals out of the system. See, you get rid of the problem, they won't be defiant. I have a lot of parents communicating with me from all over the world on that very topic right now. You can't believe the changes. I get letters 5 years, 10 years later from parents telling me how this horrible little classical kid that was kicked out of school when he was 7 years old and was never allowed to step back in, just graduated from high school with honors, top of his class, valedictorian, going to college on a scholarship. And we just address the underlying cause. Address the underlying cause. Drugs is never the answer for kids. Drugs were not tested on kids. It's the most horrible thing in the world to use drugs on kids. It should be used very, very sparingly. Yeah, when I say this to an education audience, because they have me, I used to give a lot, I use that word used to. Notice I don't do that too much anymore. Give a lot of in-service training in special education. My minor in special education, I have 2 bachelors, 2 masters, 2 doctorates, and every one of those except the first bachelor's was a special education minor. So that's one of my specialties. And so when they come in and I have the state would hire me to go to see this school district and train their special ed people and train the people here, I would call everybody in. It would grow from just a little handful of people, so by my last session, usually 2 days, my last session, I'd have all the parents and kids in the full auditorium and just unload it on them. No drugs for the kids. Used to be. They don't invite me to do that too often now. But the fact is, and that's the reason I wrote this book right here, it's with this weight and go, it'll make you cry. I give you 2 cases of ADHD, one ended in death from the medication, another one whose dog ended in death. You'll see what we need to be doing. Parents need that information for their kids. Autism, they are almost autism. I wrote a paper about 5 years ago, no, longer, 8 years ago, on what happened to the autistic kids when they grew up, because they disappeared from our studies. The ones that we saw disappeared because they're no longer autistic. I have an autistic boy, by the way.
How do you recommend taking your pH?
What's that?
How do you recommend taking your pH?
I don't mean to be facetious,
No, how to check.
but that's why I spent $80,000 for you.
She wants to know how you check it.
How do you check it?
How you check it.
Oh, come see me. Unless you like spend money. The only other way you can tell if it's surer than what I'm going to give you is a biopsy. $10,000 a take. I'll charge you money. But the biomarker assessment is the best way. We know what biomarkers look for each pH level. I can tell you right down within a tenth of a degree where you're at in this chart here. And guess what? We've had lots and lots and lots of biopsies where they've actually spent the hard money to prove me wrong instead of prove me right. So they stopped spending money trying to prove me wrong. Yeah, the biomarkers help any way you want me to help you. And I'm sure glad you came. I hope you enjoyed it tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.